I'm starting this video off with a confession. I've never been a Corvette guy. I've always been a Mustang guy. But I bought this thing 2 years ago, sight unseen from across the country, having never driven a C6 generation Corvette of any kind. And well, I'm 100% a Corvette guy now. I fully understand the hype, and now I'm gonna make you believe the hype because this is the best used sports car that you can currently buy. Oh, and by the way, I've also modified it to the point that it makes about 740 horsepower, but you know, even stock is still fantastic value. The C6 Z06s are currently selling for as low as $30,000 US. Now that's your absolute rock bottom price. That's gonna get you multiple owners, maybe some history on the Carfax, some damage, things like that. So expect to pay around $40,000 US for one of these things. Insane value, but I do also realize that that is a lot of money for an 18-year-old sports car. But it is a lot of car for your money. Yeah, mostly right there. I truly believe that these are the rock bottom prices that we'll probably ever see for a car like this. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you exactly why. And if you are considering buying one of these, do it right now before it's too late. You're gonna have to trust me on this one. Yes, the engine is the best part. Revs to 7,000 RPM, 7-liter naturally aspirated V8, 427 cubic inches, forged internals, 505 horsepower. Before I touched it, oh my God! This is going to go down as one of man's greatest achievements of all time. Other than subscribing to my channel. Do that right now if you don't mind. Thanks. Whew. Got that out of my system. Now that I've got freedom flowing through my veins, let's take a look at that engine again. This engine was very special. They developed it for the C6R race car. It was called the LS7R, the engine code, because this is just the LS7. Shares a lot of similarities with that one, and Chevy needed a bigger motor to just destroy the entire field, and turns out they did that. So there is actually no replacement for displacement. Now this engine had so much power that Chevy didn't actually beat that in terms of natural aspiration until the C8 Z06 with its flat plane crank 5.5 liter V8, which is honestly a great engine as well. And I've actually got to spend a lot of time with the Corvette engineering team and having dinner and drinks with those guys. By the way, very, very cool guys, bunch of smart people over there, and they like to have fun and party too. There's never going to be another naturally aspirated V8 like any of these, at least as far as I can tell. And that's not because Chevy doesn't want to do that, that's just because of tightening regulations. Oh, don't mind me, I'm just hanging out with my friend LS7 over here. This video is about the C6 Z06. However, at the end of this video, I think there is a model in the C6 generation that's actually being slept on, and I think that's an even better value than the C6 Z06. Now, the mid-2000s era of cars was relatively simple. We've got a Tremec 6-speed manual, lovely to use by the way, rear-wheel drive. Not too complex in here. We do have some electronics in terms of stability control, but this is the era of stability control where they're still trying to figure it out. So it is a little bit intrusive, but most importantly, I can hold that button, fully turn it off, fully defeat the system, and do burnouts for days. But if you go into a modern car, if you hold that button for 10 minutes or 10 hours, sometimes it doesn't make a difference. And that car will actually still have traction control on somewhat in the background, even though the icon is telling you that it's fully off, it's not actually fully off. So in my opinion, this is the best era of traction control systems that you can fully defeat. Now, safety did get better with things like airbags integrated into the seats and things like that, but the cars were still able to be relatively lightweight. And what I mean by that is that this 2006, the lightest of the bunch, weighs 3,130 pounds. That's 50 pounds lighter than the Fox body, which is regarded for being pretty lightweight. I know it's the hatch, the notches weigh less, but you know, the GT hatch is the better looking one. Debate it in the comments, you're wrong anyways. And speaking of hatchbacks, in case you didn't know, this is one. There is so much space back here. You can fit all the Nike Air Monarchs you could ever dream of, New Balances, whatever you want. You got ridiculous hats because, you know, you just got to embrace it once you get to that point in your life. And that's right, let's go golfing. Oh, also, it's mandatory that you have a chair for attending car shows and just, you know, sitting there and flexing on everybody with your Velocity yellow tint coat made on Friday, one of one, you know, just, it's Corvette things. Let's get a little bit superficial. The looks. We got a wide body. Only on the C6 Z06, Grand Sport, and ZR1. The base does not get this wide body, and I think it's really missing out. This is how this thing should have looked. You can tell from the back, you can tell from the vents over here. Amazing. Now let's move around to the front though. These caused a lot of not Rex's, but the headlights have caused a lot of controversy when the C6 first came out. The C5 had pop-ups, everybody loved those, and when the C6 came out, everybody missed them. But was everybody wrong, including myself? Yeah, everybody was wrong. This thing has aged so gracefully that it's currently one of the best looking cars on the road if you include all modern cars. If you can see it behind Rex. Rex, do you miss the pop-ups? Couldn't care less. So let's revisit how this thing got its lightweightness. It's got carbon fiber and balsa wood floors to save weight and an aluminum frame which differentiates it from the base Corvette and other Corvettes. And then this target top is actually not a target top at all. It looks like it is. It's not removable on the C6 Z06. It is removable on the Grand Sport and the regular Corvette, but not on this one. So unless you start unbolting things and hacking things off, and it's not really meant to come off. So I wouldn't recommend it. There are conversion kits by a bunch of aftermarket companies. Not really sure if I'd recommend them because this car needed the rigidity, but I'm sure they figured something out by this point. Now, to revisit the inside of this car, Corvettes have always been criticized for their interiors. The C5 generation was pretty bad, if you can believe it, compared to the C6. I actually don't mind this C6 generation at all. I drove a C5 and it felt like it was just gonna fall apart. It rattled like crazy. This is a huge improvement. Now these seats, straight up suck. Very comfortable, you could do thousands of miles on them, but if you're trying to do any track driving, not a chance. There's no bolstering here. They get super hot. They are also heated, but they're not cooled. If you're gonna go to hit the track, definitely change these seats out. Now, speaking of the racetrack, that's where this thing shines. I took it to my local track, which is Toronto Motorsports Park in Cayuga. I took it to the road course and the drag strip. So on the road course, I did about a 118 lap, if I recall, and that was straight out of the box, after all the modifications, about 5 laps in. And for reference, anything under 120 is really quick at that track. So this thing was super easy to drive as long as you turned off the traction control fully because it was cutting a lot of power, and then you were able to feather the throttle yourself. Otherwise, you would just end up backwards, which I never did, by the way. Then I took it to the quarter-mile drag strip. I don't really have a time to be proud of because it was my first time driving it. Plus, I know this thing's supposed to do about high 11s out of the box. I was able to do kind of mid 11s. That's because I'm on the Continental Extreme Contact Force tire, which is a really good endurance road course autocross tire. It is not a drag tire. So if you threw a set of Hoosier drag radios on the back, I guarantee this thing would be in the 9s. 9 seconds for a manual transmission car is ridiculously fast. That's like McLaren, Ferrari, Lambo territory, and those are all modern automatic supercars. I guarantee one of these days when I get a set of slicks, I'm gonna run a 9 in this. Oh, and by the way, on top of sounding great, if you can even hear me, is also extremely reliable. You can beat this thing to redline all day, and now my redline is 7,200 RPM because yeah, this thing's modified. Now I've been very real with you guys in this video, but I'm gonna get even realer if that's possible. The C6 Z06 does actually have some drawbacks because of the LS7. Parts are harder to find for this engine specifically because they only put it into this car and the Camaro Z28. And then because of that, parts are actually more expensive when you do find them. So there are things like alternators that I've had to replace that cost way too much money. Like let's call that $700 to $900 Canadian, so maybe $500 US, whereas for any other Corvette LS based, probably would have been $100 to $200 at the most. So things like that do come up. And for that reason, the car that I think is being slept on is the Grand Sport. The Grand Sport comes with the LS3 engine, which is a 6.2 liter V8. And those can be had all day long for $25,000 to $30,000 US. And that is an absolute bargain in comparison to this. That'll save you at least 10 grand. The Grand Sport gets the same wide body as the Z06 and the ZR1, so it looks fantastic. There are some design differences, especially up front in the front fender, but overall, I mean, it's basically the same. It even gets the same nostril at the front. And the LS3 is a dry sump lubrication system in that manual transmission version of the Grand Sport, just like the one in the LS7. And the LS3 in the Grand Sport is also hand-built, just like this LS7, and you also get the same brakes as the Z06. These are 6-piston, and yeah, I know I have to change this badge. It came with the 427 badge. I would love to put the regular Z06 badge back on here, but that's another story. Although, flexing with 427 cubic inches, that is pretty sick. And of course, the LS3 does make less power than the LS7. It's not that much less, but you do get less displacement. It's only a 6.2 versus a 7, but parts are way easier to find, way cheaper, and if you do start modifying them, the gains are basically equivalent to the LS7. You'll never make as much, but you'll make pretty close, and it's a fun car. And if we look at other cars that are priced relatively similar to the C6 Z06, let's look at another Corvette, the C7 Stingray. That is the base model of the next generation of this Corvette. 460 horsepower-ish, priced the same, much nicer interior, but it's an LT-based engine. It's no longer an LS. It's not quite there, at least for me. I've driven one. They're very nice, but looks-wise and power-wise, no, I would still definitely go with this one. So that covers off comparable Corvettes. Now let's look at the competitors. Ford Mustangs, not this Fox body, Shelby GT350s. That 5.2-liter Voodoo V8 flat-plane crank thing revs to the moon. I love driving it. It sounds intoxicating. It is a fantastic sports car, but it does have one inherent flaw. The best part of that car is the engine. It blows up, unfortunately. And Ford doesn't even sell a crate version of that engine, so you can't even get a replacement. And you're just gonna have to find a used one, which really sucks, because I was considering buying that car, and maybe I still will in the future, but just having that potential of that engine blowing up hanging over my head, and the fact that they cost around $40,000 to $50,000 in the bottom end, and $50 to $60 US is probably where you'll want to buy one, because you probably don't want to buy one that's been beat on in the low end. It's kind of a lot of money. So in terms of other rear-wheel drive manual sports cars in that price range, I would look at BMW M2s, M3s, M4s, Dodge Vipers. What else we got? Probably Dodge Challenger Hellcat RTs, Scat Packs, no Hellcats unless they're extremely beat up, and you probably don't want one of those for that price. And it probably won't have a manual transmission for that price. Older Boss 302s, Shelby GT 500s, stuff like that. So it's all like decent, but I still think this is the best one. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I right? And I mean, I think I am. And I honestly think you should pick one of these up before it's too late. The prices cannot go lower than this. I know a lot of people say that about a lot of different cars, but just think about it. 7-liter naturally aspirated V8 that they're probably never gonna make. And it looks fantastic. Thanks for watching.